it was clear to me that the value proposition was one of a shared proposition. If the community succeeds, the bank would succeed. If the community failed, the bank would fail. And that just seemed to be how close it was tied. It needed to be that way. And so that's really where I think when you think about the business model or the mission particularly, it grew out of this need to engage and innovate with the community, new products and services, how to adapt to the environment, hire Hmong employees, understand the culture, and really begin to engage and prosper. And it worked.
Welcome to American Dreams. My guest this week is David Reiling. David, welcome to today's show.
Thanks, Alan. Great to be here.
So, David, you have a very unique background. Tell us a little bit about the picture in your background and the meaning that it has.
Sure. So the picture that sits behind me is what's known as Lower Town in St. Paul, Minnesota. And it is the place where my Italian grandparents landed and lived when they immigrated to the U.S. And it was a place where it was Little Italy at the time. And so it's near the Mississippi River. It flooded. Doesn't smell so great from time to time, but that was the origin of me and my heritage here in St. Paul, Minnesota.
And so you're still up there in St. Paul to this day?
Yes, I am. Yep.
All right. Well, let's roll into your path in life. You grew up in the area, and then tell us about your college and then what you did after that.
Sure. So, yeah, my journey has been, I started out working for my uncle in construction. So every summer I can remember, except for one, I worked construction. And the one I didn't, I was a teller at a bank. And I loved being a teller. And it was in Minneapolis. I thought it was so exciting, the people and the money. And the bank that I was in that year got robbed twice that summer. And I thought it was super exciting. I really did. I just thought this is where the money is and there's action and people rob it. And so it was really kind of my first foray into banking. But from there, it was on to college. I went to the University of San Diego, had an absolute wonderful experience, and started a business while I was in college and just had a marvelous time growing that business of selling T-shirts and sweatshirts and hats and all sorts of things to fraternities and sororities. And the business really took off and had contracts with businesses around the San Diego area. And so it was cool. I ended up selling that business after I graduated, and my passion and love for banking took me to Los Angeles as a trainee in a bank that was known as First Interstate Bank in Los Angeles. So it was near downtown, and robberies kind of stuck with me. The first 2 weeks of being a trainee there, the bank I was in got robbed 3 times. And so it was on that third time that was kind of a career changer a bit for me. And that was the manager who was in that branch had stepped out for a moment to have a smoke. And I kind of led the recovery of the bank robbery. And so, you'd put the tellers aside. I knew the FBI agents by name by that time. So it also happened to be the district manager's office, and she got wind of this. And lo and behold, the next week I found myself in South Central Los Angeles, the bank robbery capital of the world at the time, in banking. And so I learned an absolute ton. They gave me more responsibility than they probably should have from a banking standpoint, but I learned about gangs and drugs and riots and cops, earthquakes. I mean, it was a full-fledged experience. But I'll tell you, I had the third time I had a gun to my head, I'm like, my luck just may not hold. So a mentor of mine in the past at First Interstate reeled me in. I went over to work for Citibank in downtown and had a wonderful, marvelous experience there, and built a really nice portfolio. Was having some success and climbing that corporate ladder until my father called, and he said, there's a bank for sale. It is about to fail, but it is something that we could possibly buy if you're interested. And so, lo and behold, I discovered I'm really more of an entrepreneur because I jumped on it right away. And so we bought this bank that was failing. And boy, I got married bought a bank, went on a honeymoon, and moved back to Minnesota all in the span of about 4 months' time. So it was a quick turnaround, but it was great transition. That's what brought me back to Minnesota.
You know, going into the new model with your dad, what was it that you thought you could do differently than the prior owners did? Yeah.
Yeah, this bank had actually quite a history to it. In short, not the people that we bought it from, but the prior one, he did federal prison time twice for fraud in this bank. And then the owners that we bought it from really ignored the community around it. So the typical bank redlining, this was just a textbook example of you take deposits from the local community, but you only make loans in the suburbs. And so this was an immigrant community, and at the time it was Laotian or Hmong, but it has always been an immigrant community. And so it was just like the picture behind me, the Little Italy. It's just kind of where the immigrants would settle. They'd work on the railroad, et cetera. So what I thought, though, in buying this bank was really, it was clear to me that the value proposition was one of a shared proposition. If the community succeeds, the bank would succeed. If the community failed, the bank would fail. And that just seemed to be how close it was tied. It needed to be that way. And so that's really where I think when you think about the business model or the mission particularly, it grew out of this need to engage and innovate with the community, new products and services, how to adapt to the environment, hire Hmong employees, understand the culture, and really begin to engage and prosper. And it worked. I had a Hmong bank for actually a number of years where the majority of our customers were Hmong, and a little over 30-40% of our staff were Hmong. It was great.
So we roll forward to then the Sunrise business model,
Gotcha.
which you're currently overseeing. As you run Sunrise, what's a good client, or what's the target market for your bank?
Yeah. So I'd have to say that Sunrise is, it's opportunistic when you think about it, kind of its business model. It's really an entrepreneurial bank. So for those listeners who know the entrepreneurial operating system, we run on that system as well. So, but the business model of the bank is really twofold. And so it is place-based, what you would think of a community bank. We have 4 branches in and around the Twin Cities metro area. Our headquarters is here, but we also have an office in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. So the first business model has to do a lot of commercial lending to small businesses and real estate in and around the Twin Cities area, but really focused on low and moderate income communities here in order to do economic and community development there. It's really our specialty, and affordable housing. The other half of our business model is really what's known as, it's called many things, but banking as a service. So we're a fintech partner bank. We enable financial technology companies to offer bank products and services in a compliant manner. So maybe to give you an example of that, we partner with a company called Self out of Houston, Texas. They help people either establish their credit for the first time or repair their credit if they have bad credit. And it's a cash secured loan. But we do this nationally, and it's through a digital platform. And last year we did, I think, a little over 236,000 loans for about $175 million. It just kind of shows the power of digital and the power of scale in the fintech business. And so you may not know it, but some of the gift cards that you have may have Sunrise Banks listed on the back of that card. Those are the types of products and services that you may not know you're working with us, but you could be.
Well, it's interesting how you jumped in, or you evolved with fintech as it rolled out. And following this trend, where do you feel the banking systems will be in 10 years from now?
Wow. Well, that's, I don't know how much time you have today, but it could be summed up in a lot in terms of it's being disrupted now by digital, but it's even going to transform even faster from the standpoint of it's not just digital, but it's artificial intelligence, it's automation. It's the ability to really engage with your customer or business on a new level and using that data. But there's also a piece to this that is revolutionary. It allows you to, well, let's say automate the ordinary, but it allows you to customize and personalize to be extraordinary so that you can really serve your customers well by knowing where they are and who they are. you may know even before they do as to certain products and services that they're looking for. I also think there's another aspect of it that's, I'm maybe a little biased in this, but I think it's going to be more, that consumer is going to be more in tune and engaged with not only the bank they do business with, but the businesses they do business with, where they consume, as to what they're all about. And so transparency, I think, becomes a real forward issue as to where does the bank do business, who does it finance, and why does it do that? What's its position?
When you you have a podcast
I do.
called Next Gen Banker. Okay.
Yep.
So let's go through the podcast. How did it originate? What do you focus in? Guests that are coming on.
Yeah, thanks. Well, the Next Gen Banker podcast is really, I think, about building the community of what I would say do well by doing good bankers. And so Sunrise has a couple of certifications. One it's known as a CDFI, Community Development Financial Institution. It just means that the majority of our loans, kind of day in and day out, are to low and moderate income people or places. We're also a B Corp, which is more of a triple bottom line focused of people, planet, and prosperity. And lastly, we're also members of an organization called the Global Alliance for Banking on Values. So values-based banks, but globally. So 70 banks, 40 countries. So the podcast itself is really about not only engaging that community of bankers who are socially and environmentally kind of motivated and driven, but it's also to expand and educate others who are in the finance or in the banking business that here's a possible career. You can have more of a purpose-driven type of a career when it comes to banking and finance, and this is a community that you can engage with. So it's really, and I'm really targeted in some cases towards maybe that younger career professional who, has choices still in terms of where they may move, and educating them about what's out there. But our guests are from all over the world, from the environmental side to the social side to the tech side. And so we range the gamut there. We try to stay on the edge a little bit, and also feature a musical guest at the end. So if the podcast is very good, maybe the musical guest is.
So at the end of life, David, how do you want to be remembered by others?
I think the memory that people will want, or I will want for others to have is, he kind of proved the fact that you can own a business and do well and do good at the same time. And he kind of proved that when it wasn't so popular, but it set the stage maybe for others to carry on and to think of a business not only as a standalone on its own, but a part of society in and of itself.
David, it's been a pleasure having you with us on today's show, and best wishes to you and Sunrise and into the future success.
Sounds good, Alan. Always great to see you.